Hi, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the Ethicast, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia at the 16th Annual Global Ethics Summit. And before we get started, I just want to give a big special shout out to everyone who's attending this conference virtually from around the world. We see you. We're so glad you're here, and we hope you're having a terrific experience. In this episode, I'm with my friend and colleague, Katie Kruger, data analyst from Ethisphere. Katie, thank you so very much for joining us once again.
Glad to be here at GES and glad to be here with you, Bill.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know that you've got a session coming up on culture surveys, and this is something that you and I talk about quite a bit, and I'm eager to talk with you about it. Now, I guess my first question for you on this is such a huge topic, but a lot of organizations are interested in taking their first culture survey. What should they be keeping in mind as they undergo that process to go, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to have our first culture measurement experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So culture isn't just the policies and the trainings. It's really about the perceptions and the behaviors. And so finding a way that you can ensure that you're measuring both aspects of it is tricky. And culture, any kind of measurement, really, when you're measuring it, you want to measure in a continuous cycle of improvement. So you're measuring, you're figuring out what you need to improve, you're improving, you're measuring again to see if you've improved the thing that you were working to improve,
Sure.
See if your point has been taken. And, here at Ethisphere, we focus mainly on annual, biannual, full-fledged culture surveys.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways this can look, though, in an organization. We also are working with some of our clients now to do more pulse type surveys because, a full-fledged culture survey is really just a point in time across a year, maybe 2 years sometimes. Those pulse surveys can give you more real-time data, maybe in hotspot situations, places where you need to find out what the story really is behind what is going on. Maybe your investigations have gone up. Maybe you're hearing things from your ambassadors and you want that more detailed look at things. Focus groups, maybe you can't get the buy-in for a full-fledged culture survey, but looking at how you can talk to people in those places where you need more information, even if you can get a question added to exit interviews to find out more about how ethical culture is going. Was an observation of misconduct part of someone's decision to leave? Was retaliation a piece of that as well?
Sure.
There's so many things to consider when you're thinking about, what kind of measurement do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And what level of buy-in can I expect or can I take advantage of?
Yeah. So what does that cultural survey deployment process look like? I know there's a lot that goes into it. And I imagine for first timers, it might be a little bit more involved than they possibly expect.
Yeah. So I just listed off a ton of questions that you need to consider when you're thinking about which measurement to do to figure out how to deploy it as more questions. So who should be surveyed?
Yeah.
Are you surveying every single employee? Are you surveying just a subset, a sample? Are you surveying at just a hotspot? It is heavily dependent on which of those methods that I kind of ran through earlier you would pick. Who are you going to need to be involved? So to run a full-fledged culture survey, we find you need a lot of reliance on an HR partner, someone that can help you get the data about your employees. If you're wanting to collect anything on the back end, which business unit they're a part of, those types of things, you'll need partners in IT to help make sure that the survey arrives properly and can be accessed.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about this in a little bit, but really, forward thinking, especially as you're thinking about what information to collect about employees, who is going to need access to those insights? So if you want to give information to ELT leaders, then you need to collect information about the ELT leaders so they can get information specific to their part of the business and help enact that change.
Yeah. Now, I imagine there's somebody out there who's watching this and they're going, wow, I was going to do a cultural survey. That's an awful lot of work. Oh my God, I don't know if I actually had the bandwidth for it. It seems like this is a whole process so that depends very much on productive partnerships, whether it's with internal, external partnerships, that there is help to be had in making all this happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is a piece of relying on people who are already serving within your organization or surveying within your organization and their expertise. A lot of clients that work with us, even they're engaging an external partner, but they still rely heavily on their comms team to figure out what is your comms plan when you roll out the engagement survey,
Right.
What cadence do you use? Who do you survey? So even bouncing those ideas off of another department that has maybe had the experience, or an external partner, if you're a member of the Bella community, chatting with someone who's done a survey at their organization, and the lessons learned from them.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, there's so many people within Bella who've done this before, and they can share. And that's what Bella's all about. It's about sharing your experience. So if you're a member, you can actually, draw upon all those experiences to help inform your own culture survey.
I was in a breakout session yesterday, and I believe it's accessible online in the app still. And it was a panel of people who have done a huge mixture. So there was a panelist from LabCorp who has previously run a survey with Ethisphere, and now they're transitioning to working on it on their own. There was a panelist whose company has only ever run culture surveys on their own. There's a panelist who's only ever worked with Ethisphere. The community itself has all of the experiences and, all of those different types of measurements as well. A full-fledged culture survey can be a big undertaking.
Sure.
And so maybe you want to start with a pulse or a focus group, and Bella can help out with that too.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. So once an organization has gone through its culture survey, can you walk me through what kind of happens after the survey concludes? The post-survey action plan seems like it's every bit as important as the survey itself.
It truly is. So I think that there are two main parts. The first part is really closing the loop for employees as much and as quickly as possible. So, immediately you're not going to be able to share insights with all employees. I understand that, but thanking them for their participation, saying, hey, the survey is closed. We had this many responses. This many of you shared your voice with us, and thank you for that. That means something to employees. And then taking the time to look at your data, and it can look a lot of different ways. You'll want to look at it a lot of different ways. You'll want to look at the company as a whole. If you have any year-over-year data, you'll want to break down by whatever demographics you could potentially have collected. If you have trends over time, something that is nice about working with Ethisphere is that we can help you compare yourselves with a benchmark. Comparing. It's great to be able to compete with yourselves, but if you've never run a survey before, how do you know what good is?
When you talk with clients, how often, how does that split in terms of how much interest do you often see with, we want to compare against ourselves versus we want to compare against an external benchmark?
I think it's really dependent on the audience that's receiving the information. So of course, everyone loves to know how they compare against themselves. I think that the E&C teams in particular love that. I find that, often boards and executive leaders maybe like to rely a little bit more on the benchmark, but it really varies from company to company. And then, of course, any managers or anyone you might be relaying the information to wants to know about the things that directly impact them. They want to know, how did my team do?
Of course, that's only natural.
Exactly.
Well, Katie, I guess my last and most important question for you is, where can people go to learn more, both here at GES and outside for the rest of the year?
Absolutely. Here at GES, not for very much longer, so visit us soon, is the Culture Corner right by the registration desk. Outside, you can chat with your Bella engagement director. You can visit ethisphere.com/culture to learn more about the culture team and the work that we do to measure culture, our culture data set, and relying on your connections that you've made either here at GES, online in the chat, or through the Bella network in general.
Outstanding. Well, Katie, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about the work that you're doing on the culture team and in culture surveys. I think it's a terrific subject, and I'm always learning more every time we get together and speak. So thank you so much for coming back on the show.
I'm so glad to be here. Love the work that we do. Love the work that we get to do with our clients. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much again for joining us for this special live edition of the Ethicast, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia at the 16th Annual Global Ethics Summit. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye now.